Good morning. This is the third chapter of class 10th Nationalism in India CBSE. In the first part of this module, that is Nationalism in India, we have discussed the First World War, Khilafat and non-cooperation. Broadly, this chapter has been divided into four parts, or we can say four main headings. The first heading is First World War, Khilafat and non-cooperation, which I have already discussed in the first lecture. Today we are going to discuss about the second part, that is differing strands within the movement, and there will be two more parts, that is towards civil disobedience, and finally the last one, that is the sense of collective belonging. So overall this chapter will be divided into four main parts. I have already discussed the first part, the First World War, Khilafat and non-cooperation in the previous lecture. Today we are going to discuss about the second part, that is differing strands within the movement. Before I can introduce this topic, differing strands within the movement, I would like to tell you something. When we will be going through these headings, you will be a bit confused that in class 8th you have already learned about these topics, whether it was non-cooperation movement, whether it was Jallianwala Bagh massacre, Rowlatt Act, or civil disobedience movement, non-cooperation movement, Quit India movement and various others. So what is the need to study the things again and again? Means already we have learned these things in class 8 and again in 10th class these things are getting repeated. So obviously a question will arise in the mind, why we are discussing all these things again. In this chapter, basically in class 10th, we are going to discuss two things. One is how Mahatma Gandhi turned the Indian national movement into a mass movement. We have already gone through in the first lecture how he turned the Indian national movement into mass movement by the 1920s. But if we go through all the three mass movements that Mahatma Gandhi had in India, the first one non-cooperation, then civil disobedience and finally Quit India movement, we'll come to know that only Quit India movement got the success. It ended by the time period, it started in 1942, near about ended in 1945 or something, and by 1947 we got independence. So we can say that Quit India movement was a success, but non-cooperation movement, which was launched in 1920s, and civil disobedience movement, which was launched in 1930s, were not able to achieve that much success which was expected from them. So what can be the reason? That we are going to discuss in these chapters. And in the non-cooperation movement, one of the main causes of the failures of non-cooperation movement was the differing strands within the movement. Now what can be the differing strands? We will discuss it again. Let me divide this heading into sub parts. The first part which we are going to discuss is the movement in the towns. Most of the people who were residing in the towns participated in the movement, but even then it was not that much successful. Second part which we are going to discuss is rebellion in the countryside. We all know that India is a land of rural areas. Most of the population, even today, near about 70% of the population resides in the rural area, and the time period we are discussing about, we can say near about 90% of the population resided in the rural area. So how the rural area participated in the non-cooperation movement, we are going to discuss in rebellion in the countryside. This rebellion in the countryside will be further divided into two subheadings. The first one will be Awadh peasant movements, where we are going to discuss how the farmers opposed the Britishers. And second one we are going to discuss is tribal movement in the Godaam hills of Andhra Pradesh. And finally the last heading of differing strands within the movement will be Swaraj in the plantations. So if we start this heading, that is differing strands within the movement, as I was already discussing, why we are going through these topics again and again, and here basically in this chapter we have to discuss the loopholes or the shortcomings of the movements because of which it was not able to achieve the success. Though different people participated in different part of the country, whether it was rural areas, whether it was urban areas, but even then they were not able to achieve the desired success. And one of the main reasons behind that was that the various social groups which participated in this movement participated each with its own specific aspirations. All of them responded to the call of Swaraj, but the term meant different things to different people. And we all know that the basic things which the Indians were lacking against the fight of Britishers was the unity among them. With the mass movement, the people started getting united, but one of the main, again one we can say one of the main what you can say drawback was there, that was their common aim. Each and every people were fighting for different aims. Obviously, none of them were able to achieve anything. So let us discuss this heading different strands within the movement, and the first part we are going to discuss is the movement in the towns. I have divided the heading the movement in the towns into basically two parts: how the people reacted and what was the outcome. I will start with the first one, how the people reacted. The very first one is middle class participation. We all know that basically in the rural, basically in the urban areas, the people who are residing, most of them are engaged in service sector, and overall the society can be termed as the middle class. So middle class participated with great enthusiasm. As Mahatma Gandhi has asked, in the non-cooperation movement we don't have to cooperate with the Britishers. So the students left the government schools, government officials resigned from their post, lawyers gave up their practices. Council elections in some parts of India were boycotted, as Mahatma Gandhi has already said that we are not going to cooperate with the Britishers. So even the council elections were boycotted. Foreign goods were boycotted. We have already discussed this thing in class 8th. If we are going to buy the foreign goods, obviously we were helping the British economy. So Mahatma Gandhi said that let us go for Indian goods. If we buy Indian goods, the money will circulate in India only, and that will be providing employment opportunity as well as the boost to the Indian economy. Liquor shops were picketed. Here I would like to discuss what do you mean by picketed. People used to in Hindi we call it gherao. People used to sit all around the liquor shops, and they asked the common people who were visiting these liquor shops not to buy the liquor from these shops. First of all, liquor is not good for health, and the second thing, if you are buying the liquor from the foreign shops, obviously the money is moving towards British economy. So the people requested the buyers not to buy liquor from these shops. As well as the last point, that is foreign clothes were burnt. Clothes were the basic needs of the people. So if you are asked not to buy the foreign clothes, the people will be moving towards the Indian clothes. To fulfill the demands, lots of industries will come up. It will provide employment, and overall the economy will boost in India. So one of the main part of this movement was the boycott of foreign goods, liquor shops as well as the foreign clothes. The people who were engaged in trade, for example the traders and merchants, they refused to trade in foreign goods or finance foreign trade. So all these points were a part of the movement in the towns. Each and every person in the town was eagerly participating in the movement. The movement reigned for 2 or 3 months with a great vigor, but very soon it started failing. Let us discuss the reasons why it failed. So the second part of the movement in the towns, why the movement failed. As we have already discussed, Mahatma Gandhi has asked the Indians not to buy the foreign goods, not to cooperate with the Britishers, or not to participate in any of their activities. But obviously, if the people are not participating in the British activities, they must get some alternative opportunities. They must get some alternative options, and that was lacking in India. I have divided this heading into two sub parts. The first one is khadi cloth was too expensive, as the Indians were asked not to buy the British goods, the British clothes, or we can say the foreign clothes were burnt. Huge bonfires were made out of them. But if you are not going to buy the mill-made foreign goods or the foreign clothes, obviously you need the cloth, and the alternative left with the Indians was khadi. Khadi was handmade. Obviously it was too costly, and it was not possible for the poor Indians to buy it. They cannot afford it. So they were left with no option. Within 2 or 3 months they started buying the foreign clothes again. Same way the second heading was lack of alternative Indian institutions. As we have already discussed, students left government schools, government officials resigned, lawyers gave up their practices. But for how much time you can do this thing? Obviously if you are a student, you have to continue with your studies. If you are not going to the school, for how much time you can do that? They continued this trend for 2 or 3 months. After that, obviously their studies was getting affected. They were left with no option, has to join back the British schools. Same way the government officials who has resigned 2 or 3 months or maximum 4 months after that, they were again looking for jobs. Their savings were over, and as there was no alternative Indian institutions which can provide them jobs, there were some Indian institutions which were coming up, but as far as the demand was concerned, the supply was not equal to that. So people were left with no option, and they started joining back the British institutions or the government institutions. So overall we can say the movement started with great enthusiasm in the cities, in the towns, but it was for a very short period. It was not able to achieve the desired success, and it failed. Let us move towards the next heading, and that is rebellion in the countryside. As I have already discussed, India is a country where most of the people reside in the rural areas. So obviously we must know how the people reacted to this movement in the rural areas, how they participated in the movement, and what was the outcome. We'll divide this chapter, this heading rebellion in the countryside, into two sub-headings. One is the Awadh peasant movements, and the another one is the tribal movement in the Godaam hills of Andhra Pradesh. First I am going to discuss the Awadh peasant movement. Most of the population in India was based on agriculture. Most of the people were farmers, and in class 8 also you would have gone through the various type of taxation. For example, the permanent system or the Mahalwadi system, Rayatwadi system, under which the various type of taxes were imposed on the Indian farmers. And overall we can say, because of these taxes, the Indian farmers were denied the opportunity to do the agriculture. They were so much burdened by the taxes that they started leaving the agriculture. So here we are going to discuss Awadh peasant movement, how the farmers went against the British policies, but overall it was also not a great success. So what were the reasons behind it? I have divided this thing, the Awadh peasant movement, into three subheadings. The very first one is the participation of the peasants. The peasants participated under the leadership of Baba Ramchandra, who was a sannyasi and had been worked as an indentured labor. Now the thing which comes over here is, what do you mean by indentured labor? We are going to discuss this topic or this concept indentured labor in the coming chapters again. But here I will just try to give you a definition of indentured labor. These were the contract laborers who were taken to different part of the country or the different part of the world to work in the plantations. Because the contract was signed between the employer and the employed, that's why they were termed as indentured labor. So Baba Ramchandra has gone to Fiji to work as an indentured labor. There he came to know the exploitative policy of the colonial government. When he came back to India, he found the same type of policies in the area where the farmers were working. So he led this movement in Awadh. The movement was against landlords or the talukdars who demanded high rents and other cesses. Now what do you mean by other cesses? In the class 9th we have already gone through the chapter, that is French Revolution, and there we have come to know that the church and the jamidars, or no, jamidars was not the concept over there, feudals were there. The church and the landlords, the feudals used to have cesses on the common people. Other than the regular taxes, they have to do the various type of activities for the feudals or for the churches, for which they were not being paid. So here in India also, the landlords, other than asking for high rents and the high taxes, ask for other cesses. For example, in the farmers would have to work for the landlords and they would not be paid for that. You can indirectly say it was begar, but the farmers cannot revolt against that. They cannot deny the thing. The main demands of the peasants, that was reduction of revenue, abolition of begar. Begar I have already discussed under that other sessions, and social boycott of landlords. Here again one interesting thing can be there. In the various parts of Awadh, Nai Dhubi Bandhs were organized. Now it is very interesting. What was this Nai Dhobi Bandh? We already know that during this part or this time period, the society was broadly divided into two parts: the upper caste and the lower caste. So the Nai Dhobi were basically the part of the lower caste, and the work done by them was nearly not done by the people of upper caste, like the Nai, the barbers, or the washermen. They used to give the services to the upper caste. So here, when the peasants started the movement against the landlords, they thought of going for the Nai Dhobi Bandhs, where the high caste people or the landlords and talukdars were denied of the services provided by the barbers and the washermen. Congress, which was going for the massive movements, was also interested in this Awadh peasant movement, and they extended their support to this particular movement. The very first one was the participation of Jawaharlal Nehru. During the time period of June 1920, Jawaharlal Nehru began going around the villages in Awadh, talking to the villagers and trying to understand their grievances. Finally, because of his participation and the active participation of Baba Ramchand, Awadh Kisan Sabha was formed, and Jawaharlal Nehru was the head of this Awadh Kisan Sabha. Baba Ramchand and few others were part of this, and within a very short period, over 300 branches of this Awadh Kisan Sabha was being established all over Awadh. The main aim of this Awadh Kisan Sabha, or the active participation of Congress in this Awadh peasant movement, was an effort to integrate the Awadh peasant struggle into the wider struggle. Awadh peasant struggle was overall concentrated in Awadh only, and the complete India was going for the non-cooperation movement. So there was an effort to align the non-cooperation movement overall India as well as the Awadh peasant movement. So this one was the peasant movement, but again it was not able to achieve the success. So let us discuss the reasons behind it. So the heading, why the movement failed. The first point which we have to discuss is the movement developed in forms that the Congress leadership was unhappy with. For example, Mahatma Gandhi has always said that we have to go for a non-violent way by which we have to oppose the Britishers. But once the movement started in the Awadh, the homes of the talukdars and merchants were attacked, bazaars were looted, and grain hoards were taken over. So the topmost leadership of Congress, especially we can say Mahatma Gandhi, was not happy with the way the movement was running. So here it is, violence erupted, house of talukdars, merchants were attacked, bazaars looted, and grain hoards were taken over. Same way, the message of Mahatma Gandhi was wrongly interpreted. Mahatma Gandhi has said that we are not going to cooperate with the British. He has never said that we are not going to obey their rules. But once the movement started, in many places, local leaders, especially in Awadh, told peasants that Gandhiji had declared that no taxes were to be paid and land was to be redistributed among the poor. So overall, we can say the name of the Mahatma was being invoked to sanction all actions and aspirations. And overall, these things were not asked by Mahatma Gandhi. So overall, we can say that the leadership of Congress was not happy with the movement. They withdrew their support and the movement failed in the Awadh. Let us go for the second part of this heading, rebellion in the countryside. Here we are going to discuss the tribal movement in Gudam Hills of Andhra Pradesh. Again, we will divide the heading into 2 or 3 subheadings, and the first heading is why tribals revolted. Already in class 9th, we have gone through the chapter in which we have studied about the forest, the various government policies which were related to the forest and how they affected the inhabitants of forest. When the British people started capturing the forest, the people who were residing in the forest were denied of their basic rights. Most of the forest areas were closed, thus preventing people from entering the forest to graze their cattle or to collect fuel wood and fruit. This enraged the hill people. Not only were their livelihoods affected, but they felt that their traditional rights were being denied. traditional rights, they felt that as they were born in forest only, so overall they can use the forest. We cannot use the word exploit. They were not exploiting the forest, they were only taking their basic needs from the forest. And when the Britishers closed the forest and asked the tribal people to move out of the forest, they felt that their traditional rights were being denied. To exploit the forest, the Britishers had to build the roads in the forest to bring out the forest products. For this work, they needed lots of labor, and they asked the tribal people to do the begar. They have to work, they have to build the roads, but for that they were not paid anything. So when the British government forced them to contribute begar for road building, the tribals revolted. The second part of this heading is Alluri Sitaram Raju, who was the leader of the tribal movement in Godaam Hills of Andhra Pradesh. Rebels proclaimed that he was an incarnation of God. It's a very interesting thing why he was termed as an incarnation of God. As Alluri Sitaram Raju claimed that he had a variety of special powers, he could make correct astrological predictions, heal people, and he could survive even bullet shots. So that was an amazing feature which Alluri Sitaram Raju proclaimed, and because of that the tribals or the rebels thought that he was an incarnation of God. But there was a good thing about Alluri Sitaram Raju. He talked of the greatness of Mahatma Gandhi and persuaded the tribal people to wear khadi and give up drinking. So basically he was fighting against the social evils which was prevailing in the tribals. The outcomes of the revolt, again we can say that the revolt or the movement was not going as Mahatma Gandhi wanted or as the Congress wanted. Some reasons were there. The first one, though Raju believed in the policies of Mahatma Gandhi, he was an active supporter of Mahatma Gandhi, but he differed with Mahatma Gandhi in one main thing, and that was Mahatma Gandhi was supporting the non-cooperation movement, or he was always a follower of Satyagraha, or we can say non-violence, but Raju had a firm belief that India could be liberated only by the use of force, not non-violence. So when he instigated the people of Godaam Hills, the tribals over there, the Godaam rebels attacked police stations, attempted to kill British officials, and carried on guerrilla warfare for achieving Swaraj. And that was totally against the policy of Congress, or we can say Mahatma Gandhi. Finally, Alluri Sitaram Raju was captured and executed in 1924, but by that time he has already become a folk hero. So again we can say in this part also, that is the rebellion in the countryside, Awadh peasant movement started with a great vigor but was not a great success. The same way the tribal movement started in Andhra Pradesh Godaam Hills but was not able to achieve the desired success. Let us move towards the last part of this module, that is Swaraj in the plantations. What were plantations? The Britishers or the colonial people, when they came in the countries like India, Sri Lanka, Indonesia and various other parts, they started building up the plantations because the climatic conditions over here were highly suitable for the plantations, and in the plantations you can grow the cash crops, especially spices, tea, coffee, etc. But the one main problem with the plantations were that it is a totally labor based thing. You need a lot of labor to work in the plantations. So the Britishers started capturing people from different parts of the country and took them to the plantations, especially in the Assam, to work for them. For plantation workers in Assam, freedom meant the right to move freely in and out of the confined space in which they were enclosed, and it meant retaining a link with the village from which they had come. But the Inland Emigration Act of 1859 restricted the plantation workers to leave the tea gardens without permission. They cannot leave the tea gardens without permission, and the permission was near about not being allowed to any of the plantation workers. So when Mahatma Gandhi started the non-cooperation movement, the plantation workers felt that now they are free to leave the tea gardens, they can go back to their villages and the various part of the country from where they have came, and they started the movement, or we can say they started leaving the tea gardens. Workers defied the authorities because they thought that they are becoming a part of the non-cooperation movement, where Mahatma Gandhi has asked not to cooperate with the Britishers. So they defied the authorities, left the plantations and headed home, but were now never able to get back to their home. Again, there was a big problem, as Mahatma Gandhi has asked people not to cooperate with the Britishers. The people who were working in the railways and steamers has went for a strike, and as we all know that in the northeastern region, which is a main area of the Brahmaputra river and its branches, so if you want to cross the northeast, you will have to cross the Brahmaputra at many places, and you can cross the Brahmaputra only by the boats and steamers, but these boats and steamers were having a strike. So these workers, or these plantation workers, were stranded on their way by a railway and steamer strike, were caught by the police and brutally beaten up. So this one is the end of the second part of this chapter, Nationalism in India. Here we have discussed differing strands within the movement. We have divided that heading into movement in the towns, rebellion in the countryside, and overall Swaraj in the plantations. We can say that the different people were having an eager participation in the movement, but even then the movement was not a great success. One of the main reasons was the different people who were participating in the movement were not having a common aim. All of them were fighting for individual aspirations and aims. And obviously, if you are going against a great power like Britishers, you should be united, you should go for a common aim. If your aim is not a common one, as the movement ended, people were not able to achieve anything. But in spite of all these things, non-cooperation movement can be termed a success, because it was one of the first mass movements by Indians. People of India were united by one person, that was Mahatma Gandhi. They were emotionally relating to an all India agitation. When they acted in the name of Mahatma Gandhi or linked their movement to that of the Congress, they were identifying with a movement which went beyond the limits of their immediate locality. In the next part of the module, I am going to discuss towards civil disobedience, but that will be in the next lecture.